Another edition of Riding Home. Matt DeBerry, Dean Legge. We're going to talk about the ramifications from the draft. We're going to talk about these over/under numbers. We're going to talk about a lot of different stuff. Matt, recruiting has started in earnest in terms of travel and so forth. What's the latest there? And we'll see where the conversation leads.
Yeah, well, I posted on Dog Post recently. A lot of big visitors in the month of June. This is kind of where things start to really amp up. Spring practice across the state of Georgia and across the country is in May. After that, kids want to take their official visits, get those done early in the summer, make their decision before going into their senior season. You went out and saw Kendall Milton when he made his commitment around this time. We saw in the 2018 class, June, with Zamir White and those guys. It really starts to kick off then. So they're going to have guys like Caleb Downs, number one player in the state for me, in town first weekend of June for an official visit. Justice Haynes rushed for over 2,300 yards last year. Blessed Trinity, Georgia Legacy. He's going to be there that first week of June. Jamal Jarrett, maybe another Jordan Davis type, big, massive interior defensive tackle prospect. He'll be taking his official visit in June. So lots of kids, lots of out-of-state kids coming to Athens in June for their official visits. And I think that's when the ball is really going to get rolling, and we're going to start seeing a lot of commitments to Georgia this summer. And you can imagine how easy it's been for Kirby Smart and the staff to recruit, but now they've got championship rings, trophies to show off, 15 up, 15 down at the NFL draft. They have all the resources in the world to get basically anyone they want, and they're going to have an opportunity to do that in June with all these kids on campus.
Yeah, 15 up and 15. My wife last night was reading to me where James Skowski had signed a free agent. She was saying Justin Ross had signed a free agent, and I was like, man, like James Skowski's honestly, I don't see how he plays football much longer considering his
Right.
condition physically. But when you look at 15 up and 15 down, and that was just striking.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they didn't miss.
No.
They didn't miss. And when Kirby and these guys go into living rooms and say, hey, our goal for you is to go 3-and-out, they can say that with guys like Lewis Seen and Trayvon Walker and Nakobe Dean, all those guys from that 2019 class who end up being drafted. They have Nolan Smith, who's going to be not a 3-and-out, but he could be a first-round pick next year. Came back for another season. So, I mean, Quay Walker, he wasn't 3-and-out, but he was 4-and-out first-round pick. So these guys are developing. They're coming in very good players, and they're leaving very good players, even better players. And, we're seeing it in the draft. So if you're a major Georgia target right now, it's tough to look at Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann and Trey Scott and Todd Hartley in the face and say, you know what, I'm going to go elsewhere.
Well, I think the development part is really key too, because when you talk about Quay, he was an afterthought, generally speaking. He turned into a first round draft pick. I never felt personally like Devontae was an afterthought, but he had to be developed for sure. And I guess not that long ago I was talking about how I couldn't recall who the third defensive lineman was in the draft, and of course it was Jordan Davis. So you had Trayvon, Jordan, and Devontae. I think the only one that wasn't developed, so to speak, in a way that the other two were, was Trayvon. But that would suggest that he wasn't developed. I mean, yeah, of course he was. I mean, he went from you know top 50 to number one. I mean, I don't think there was a time when Trayvon was not going to be the number one guy. Excuse me, not going to be a top 50 guy, but to be a first round draft pick, I mean, that's pretty exceptional, Matt. Excuse me. Well, to be a first round draft pick is exceptional. To be number one overall, I mean, I think it's something they
It,
can sell. Go ahead.
it couldn't have gone any better, right? Just like
No.
Trevor Lawrence, 3 years and boom, you're the number one pick, 3-and-out, number one overall pick. Trayvon Walker did the same thing. So he was really good. We saw him in high school. He was very, very good. Never thought he'd be the number one overall pick. And you could still make the case that Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis were the two best defenders on the team. And then Devonta White was a guy who we talked about before last year as a guy who was one of the more underrated, underappreciated guys on the team, but he just lives in the backfield. And I mean, we're
So
seeing it.
athletic.
Yeah, guys like Channing Tindall and Quay Walker didn't really do a whole lot their first 2 or 3 seasons, but last year they really turned it on. And so we're seeing, the staff able to tell these guys, hey, you can sit for a year or two, wait your turn, develop, and you could still be a first round pick. If you stay here, listen to us, work with us, and develop under us, you're going to make it.
The other thing that I want to touch on are the two A's that Kirby now have, which is um, I was going to say accountability. I actually should have read. This is why you see people on TV writing things down because it's hard to remember things while you're talking. But authentic. He's always been authentic, but now he's certainly an authority on this matter. If he wasn't before, he can go to like I've talked about him a lot, and I do not. We'll just see what the future holds for Zion Logue. But he can go to Zion Logue in a season, I mean, in a year from now, well, in 9 months from now, and say, hey, do you want to be a fifth round or a fourth round draft pick, or do you want to be a top 50 pick? Because the decision you make right now really matters. And Kirby now has the he is authoritative in this because now he's done it. I see you laughing. Um, I got enough A's in my life, let me tell you. But it's it was a striking. I think when you pull back 40,000 feet and you look at what happened at the draft, we've talked about it. We're a week after the draft now, and it's hard not to still talk about it. I mean, it was a record for that many rounds in the draft, 7 rounds, 15 guys. That's two and a little bit guys per round. It was exceptional, man, and I kind of lose words for it. How do they sell this now to the 2024, 2025s? And when you get them on campus, what will they do? How will they talk about this to the prospects?
Well, it's a big deal. We see it at Butts-Mehre lined up all the first round picks with their picture, who they are, this and that. And, they got to make room for 5 more guys on that wall. And so it's easy to see when they take these kids through, the football facility. It's everywhere, right? The trophies are everywhere. Pictures of old players are everywhere. Where they got picked, by who. So it is a big deal. And they've talked about it for a while. When Kirby got to Georgia, he said, this is the plan. This is what we're going to do. And now he can say, we did it, right? We put guys in the first round. We won championships. We've broken records on the field with one of the best defenses we've seen of all time. And then you can look at the draft too and say, hey, not only 15 guys, but 15 guys in the first 6 rounds, 5 of them in the first round, a few more in the second. It's not like they're all going in the fourth, fifth, and sixth. So when they're telling these parents, they can back it up now.
Yeah,
And
they
they
did
sold
back
it.
it up.
They sold that message, and then they did what they were supposed to do. They put it all together and said, now they can say, hey, no, we told these kids we were going to do it. Now we did, and now we can do the same for your child, son, whoever.
Yeah, I mean, I think when well, let's just topic just a second or two here, Matt, and talk about the over unders for this season are out. And I'll tell you, it's kind of an exceptional thing to see. But the folks in Las Vegas have put Georgia as an 11 and a half. They're over under at 11 and a half. Now, let me just talk for a second here. You can hear people buying DAWGSTRUCTION, which I should make sure you're picking it up. I'm running out of copies in this publication in this particular run of books. 11 and a half. I will remind you, excuse me, Matt, that they only played 12 games. So 11 and a half is what we've seen in the past with Clemson being in the ACC. 11 and a half is what we've seen occasionally with Alabama, although not commonly. Um, that is an exceptional number for Georgia. To me, it says one thing. It says, hey, they play in the SEC East, not in the West. But still, it shows there's tremendous possibility that Georgia could go undefeated in 2022.
Yeah, they can lose one game and still get to that 12 mark, including an SEC championship. And
Well, but the
did
betting,
I get
I
that
do
math
want to
right?
add. Well, no, you do have that. What you just said is true, but it shows you're not a bettor, which is probably smart. Um, but you gotta win the 12 games in the regular season.
Right. Okay. Right. I mean, it can happen. Like you said, they're not in the West. The West is cutthroat. I mean, the best division of college football. The East is going to get better, and we'll talk about that this offseason. I think Tennessee is going to get better. I think South Carolina is going to take a small step forward. Kentucky's still strong, but
Yeah.
Missouri, Vanderbilt, I mean, I don't know what to expect from Florida. Probably not much, but I think the East is slowly, getting better. But it's a division Georgia should win, probably win easily again. And then you're gonna have to play Alabama or A&M. I'd say are probably going to be the two out of the West. So it's there for the taking again, and Georgia's in a position where they can get better as the season goes on. We're going to figure a lot about this team since it is so young and there's so many positions up for grabs. We could see different players playing throughout the season. There's still room to bring in more transfers, right? And injuries are going to happen. So this team might look a little different than what it was coming out of the spring when we didn't see guys like Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington, a few other guys, some young players on defense we didn't see this spring. So there's still a lot of question marks, good question marks that I have on this team because I think they're better than what we saw in the spring. And we said after G-Day that this looks like a top 5, top 3,
Oh yeah.
maybe top team in the country yet again. And they're
Yeah.
still missing so many guys. So I don't think it's out
Oh,
of the question that Georgia runs the table again.
yeah, I'm sorry, Matt. I see what you're saying. The product we saw on the field that day looked like a
Yeah.
top 5 team. Nevertheless, adding
Yeah.
the other guys. Let me read a couple of these teams off to you. I want your just immediate reaction. Let's just keep it to maybe 3 sentences. The over under for the Gators is 7.
Take for the number of wins for
Correct.
Florida.
Let's start. Let's
Give me
start.
the
Let's start
under.
over. The over under. Matt's gonna quickly answer these in a few seconds or fewer. Matt, over under Gators are at 7.
Under. They're not deep enough.
Georgia Tech 3.
They're the ACC. Give me more than that. They've got to progress at some point. Give me over 3.
Okay. Alabama 11.
Give me the over. Could be the best team in college football.
Clemson Tigers at 10.
Schedule's still a little weak. Quarterback worries for sure, but I'll take that over.
I take the over for Clemson too. Maybe I'm a little
Yeah.
bit naive. I don't know. Uh, South Carolina 5.5.
Over. I like South Carolina, I think, more than others.
Okay.
That's
You're
tough,
bullish. You're
but
bullish on the Palmetto State, which is
a
usually
little bit.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
usually good for hurricanes, I would say, more than anything. Hurricanes and bad roads. Florida State at 7.5.
Under. They're not ready. They don't know what they're doing yet.
I'll remind you that Clemson plays Notre Dame on the road, Florida State, uh, Louisville, and there's somebody kind of at the back end of they got NC State who we'll see, and they also have Pitt. I think for me, it's an over, but mm, I guess I'm not as convinced. I'm not sure
Yeah.
about your Carolina thing. We'll see. I mean, South Carolina's got a tough schedule. Man, you got to play Texas A&M,
Yeah.
Clemson, and Georgia. Those are probably 3 losses. So that means you got to get 6 wins in the other 9 games. And you're still playing the Gators, Tennessee, Kentucky. I don't think that they're going to be favored in any of those games. Maybe they'll be favored with the Gators. So you can't have any screw ups if you're South Carolina. A couple of more. Mississippi State 6.5.
Under. It's too tough out west.
Mizzou is at 5.
Oh, they're bad, but they should be able to win more than 5 games. But I don't know the out of conference schedule that they've got. But if it's cupcake, they might be able to get to 5.
Did we do Miami?
No.
8.5.
Give me the over. Maybe I'm in more on Miami. I think this is the year they could kind of do something. I'll take the over there.
That's also Clemson also has Miami. So this schedule for Clemson is a little bit more challenging
Yeah.
than others. Okay, couple more things here with our betting expert Matt DeBerry.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this just for a second. The lines for winning the SEC go Alabama at -140, so they're at about 58% chance to win the league. Georgia's at plus 110. That puts him around 45-ish. So those are the two. No one else is really in the same stratosphere as those two. What do you think when you hear those percentages?
Um, that seemed fair. I mean, Vegas knows what they're doing when these lines come out, and I do think Georgia and Alabama are probably the best two teams. Ohio State is going to be knocking on the door. I'm not sold on C.J. Stroud as much as everyone else, and I don't think it's a great year at quarterback going into the season, but they should be really good again. We'll see what USC does with Caleb Williams out there slinging around. It's still going to take them a little bit, but maybe the Aggies do what everyone expects them to in a couple years. They take that next step this year, but I mean, I do think it's going to come down to Georgia and Alabama. You got to get through those two teams if you're going to win the whole thing eventually.
What do you think this summer will be like for Kirby and company? I mean, you've got, the May run of recruiting has started, then you've got camps. How does he enter into this uh, this summer differently than those in the past? Or do you continue, or do you believe what you got and you go with it?
Yeah, I think at some point we're going to see happy Kirby. I mean, when can Kirby be happy? Or is it just still foot on the throat, get better every single day, just grind, grind, grind? Um, but I've talked about before, this could be his best coaching season if he gets them back to the playoffs with everything they lost. Again, they just lost 15 starters to the NFL, 8 of them on defense. If he can turn this defense around and we see guys like MJ Sherman step up, like you said, Zion Logue, maybe Nyland Green, Jamon Dumas Johnson, if these guys start playing the way they were out of high school and they're going to get developed too, I think they could be really good again. And I think a lot of that goes to, what they do this summer. Like you said, and in fall camp, it's going to be serious. And I know it might be easy for people to say, Georgia's got that national championship off their back. But if they, aren't doing the same thing and grinding every day, Nick Saban, Alabama is, right? They're continuing to bring in guys from the transfer portal. They want to get back to the top of college football. And if, Kirby and the staff don't continue to grind and work the same way they did every year or every day last year, who knows? They could take a step back. So they just have to stay focused on, keeping the main thing, chopping
Oh
wood,
boy.
whatever the theme is this year. There's got to be something, right? Maybe it's rebuild, reload, whatever. But they're going to have to continue to work at it because there's so many positions up for grabs. So you want to see them come out, with some competitive fire at practice. And he wants to see guys emerge and take those jobs instead of him deciding who wins. He wants someone to actually come up and win those jobs and take it for themselves. So it's going to be fierce. It's going to be competitive. And I think that's only going to help them leading into the season.
So one last thing here before we get off, I wanted to let you know, Matt, this is kind of interesting. I just got an email from the NFL, and they lay out the metrics from the draft. The number one high school in this draft was your Cedar Grove Saints. They had 3 guys selected: Jelani Woods, D'Angelo Malone, and Justin Schaefer. Marist had 2, which is shameful. Cherokee had 2. Archer had 2. I think those are the ones in the state with multiple guys. The state, Georgia had more players per capita than any state in the country. Uh, One in every 369,000 people from Georgia were drafted in the NFL draft this year, and it trailed only Texas with 29. It beat out California, Florida, Ohio, Alabama. It doubled up Alabama with the amount of guys drafted. 32 for Texas, 29 for Georgia. Comments?
It just shows how deep it is. I mean, I feel like, I cover this state, I cover recruiting high school football, and every year there's still a kid from Georgia who gets drafted. And I'm like, how did I miss on that guy? Who is he? I have to go back and see where he went to high school. So it's just so deep. There's talent everywhere, and the colleges find it, right? I can't find everyone, but I mean, it just shows, even a place like Cedar Grove, which, I mean, Cedar Grove pumps out talent left and right, but a
No
lot of these
question.
kids don't end up going to Georgia or Alabama or Clemson from the state. They go to smaller schools, but they're still really, really good. and it just shows, the resources that a lot of these programs have with the indoor facilities
Well,
and the level of talent
I
they
would
can
not
go against.
argue. I would not argue that any school in DeKalb County has
Yeah,
resources. I know Cedar Grove pretty well.
right.
I think that they would. They ain't Marist,
Yeah.
right? And
And then Hapeville has nothing down there, and by the airport, they don't have any facilities, and they pump out guys left and right too. So, I mean, it's the level of coaching and the level of competitiveness in the state that drives these kids, and I
it's
mean,
the
it's crazy.
it's the young men too. I mean, it's just
Yeah, yeah,
you start talking. Do you remember Jelani Woods? Is he before your time?
yeah. He was the quarterback at Cedar Grove, and then transitioned to tight end when he got to
Okay,
college. I
okay.
mean, he was huge. He was 6'6", like 230. It's hard to play quarterback, at at that level. But he was always a big kid and a really good athlete. And then it made his way over to Virginia. But when he was picked, I said, there we go, Cedar Grove right there. And of course, they had Notori Johnson at
Right,
Cedar Grove, and he was
right.
the big guy at the time. I saw him at a
Yes.
camp, thought it was Justin Schaefer, and I was like, oh man, this Justin Schaefer kid's really big, really good too. But I was there to talk to Notori, and of course Justin ended up being the bigger name of the two there. But I mean, everywhere you go, even in South Georgia, all the way up to Calhoun and North Georgia, I mean, the talent's everywhere in the Peach State.
Well, Cherokee with two guys, Montrell Washington and Brittany Brown. Excuse me, Britton Brown. Uh, that's not North Georgia as I call it, but
Yeah,
it's north of Atlanta.
yeah,
But I just when you look at what the league sent out, 32 players drafted. Excuse me, 32 in Texas, 29 in Georgia. Um, I mean, and you look at the play. I'm just going to run through this real quick because because we're not so far from getting off. But here are the schools that these guys went to: Clemson, UCLA, Georgia, Georgia Tech, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Notre Dame, South Carolina, Michigan State, um, Oklahoma State, Western Kentucky, Valdosta, Maryland, Memphis, Florida, Ole Miss, Georgia, Georgia, Virginia Tech, Clemson, Georgia, Georgia, Samford, not Stanford, Washington State, Houston, Liberty, Virginia, and Georgia. So quite a few guys from Georgia there, and obviously you couldn't sign 29 guys in the class as it stands right now, but that is a lot of players from the Peach State. And like I'm just going to look real quick at in the kids from Texas. Um, obviously Lewis Seen from Georgia. Texas didn't have a single player drafted, Matt, and it's shameful that they had 32 guys from the state and not one of them went to Texas. When you look at Louisiana, which is one of the most talent-rich states, period, they are not splitting guys with Alabama, but of the 10 guys from Louisiana that got drafted, one, two, three, four went to LSU, two went to Alabama. So that's a
yeah,
touch concerning, I guess you could say. Ohio, I only see two guys from Ohio State of their 13. I see three from Cincinnati. So somebody missed the boat there. In fact, both players from Ohio State, none of them went before the guys from Cincinnati. Now, this is not how you do this, but it is an interesting look at the metrics of things. And I just this the state is loaded up. I've always felt like South Carolina does a pretty good job for how small it is. Ronnie Garner told me that one time, and he's right. South
yeah,
Carolina, no players from Clemson, no players from South Carolina drafted that are in this draft, Matt. Two players from Georgia, De'Aaron Kendrick and Channing Tindall. Of course, Kendrick went to Clemson before leaving. They have Virginia Tech, South Carolina State, App State, and North Carolina. So um, it's always curious to see where guys are from. Oklahoma did, four guys from the state of Oklahoma got drafted. One from New York, man. One. It's one of the largest states in the country.
yeah.
Seven from Missouri. Almost none of them from Missouri. Are you tired of me talking yet? Michigan, the
No,
state of
I
the state of Michigan, only five players. The state of Minnesota, three. Maryland had 10. Whereas Pennsylvania? They should be pretty solid. They had five. Matt, these are some of the largest states in the country. Tennessee has a lot fewer people than Pennsylvania, and it had nine players, okay, that were drafted. Then they weren't all, I mean, they were all from the cities for the most part, But there's no excuse for this that Pennsylvania would be that low in talent. Ohio with 13 is not bad, but Ohio has a lot of a pretty healthy population. The players are in the South and in the West to some degree. Um, but when I see this, I get a little bit nerdy about analytics and just math and geography and so forth. I'm looking for Nevada. They had two. Darnell Washington will be there. Nebraska had one. You see, you hear a lot of times in politics that the demographics are predictive of the future. And if that's the case in sports, you're going to see a lot of championships in the South continuing on. Georgia, Texas. How many did Florida had fewer players, and I know Florida's got players, so I don't need to lecture people on that. Uh, I don't know, Matt. Are your Rangers going to get the job done here at some point or not?
Yes,
My guess
yes.
is no, but okay.
Bounce back, bounce back. They got it tonight. Big one,
Okay.
big one.
All right. Thanks for
So,
watching Riding Home,
uh,
and we'll see you on the other side.